On today's video, we're going to be looking at some of the recent arrests that the Sarasota Police Department has made that led to immigration holds for ICE. These are people that are likely going to get deported, but the overwhelming majority of these people broke the law. First, so let's be clear that the Sarasota Police Department isn't going out there and bothering people needlessly. The people that are being arrested and put on ICE holds already have criminal cases pending. So this isn't some indiscriminate harassment of working people. These are individuals who broke the law and now there's an ICE hold on them. Before we go into the first arrest, I want to show you guys footage of an accident that I ran into recently while Uber driving late at night in Sarasota. It was a car accident. It's not technically Sarasota, but it's a suburb called Lakewood Ranch. You all right? You okay? What's going on here? You all right? You okay? Cops. Crap. Nobody there, so there must have been a DUI they ran. Let me see that person over here. You guys all right?
Yeah.
You all right?
Yeah.
People just had an accident, lots of drunk drivers. Normally when we run into an accident scene, our natural response is to run up and help people. But then there's this horrific crime where you get involved in a car accident, and instead of sticking around and helping people, people flee the scene as soon as they can because they don't have a driver's license. So like in this case, I was just driving to Sarasota late at night. Boom, some young kids are doing some DUIs. They have an accident. Cops hadn't even shown up yet. The accident had just happened in front of me. What do? I hop out of my vehicle and offer help and make sure that there's nobody injured. There's times where you can run up to an accident scene and somebody may need attention immediately. Stopping somebody's bleeding before the paramedics arrive can be a life-saving situation for somebody. That is what you're supposed to do when you run into an accident. You're supposed to go out of your way to help people. Now imagine an individual who hurts somebody seriously, and instead of sticking around to help, they try to flee the scene as soon as possible. It's not acceptable. Meet Antonio Castro from Honduras. He is being charged with driving without a valid driver's license and leaving the scene of an accident that caused severe bodily injury. He has now an immigration hold. He will be deported. What can be said about the future of the person who suffered a serious injury during this accident? Does this individual have insurance? Is this individual going to have medical complications? Are they going to lose their home? Are they going to lose their job? What can be said about the person who was injured by him? So every time there's an immigration arrest by ICE, people post it on social media and warn the community that there's immigration raids going on in a particular neighborhood. But let's be clear, these immigration raids are targeting specific people who committed specific crimes. If law enforcement starts to randomly pick up people off the streets and arresting them for being here illegally, I'll make a video reporting that. But at this point, what is happening, the real situation here, is individuals like him who for some reason or another are driving without a valid driver's license. They get into an accident, hurt somebody, screwing up the rest of their life now, and they're likely probably not even going to have any type of insurance that can protect them now from this situation. And this guy's intention was just to drive off and pretend it didn't happen, leaving behind somebody's life destroyed. Here's a nightclub in Sarasota that many people frequent. It's a Hispanic nightclub. I'm picking up a passenger here, and the security is going to grab this person, and they're going to make sure that he gets into the back seat of an Uber. This is a responsible business. They're making sure that as people leave their premises, that they don't drive off drunk in a vehicle. You can see my white Bentley there. I let this guy borrow it. He was just supposed to, wash it for me and bring it back to the crib. But here he is at the nightclub flexing with my Bentley. I'm gonna let it slide 'cause he's a cool dude, you know what I'm saying? But you know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I don't let people borrow my Bentley, dog. But in the case of this particular business, the employees grabbed the person and made sure that he left in the backseat of an Uber and didn't get into their vehicle. That is a responsible business. This is the way you're supposed to handle drinking and driving. Now, we don't know if this individual was drinking or driving or if he just caused an accident, but the overwhelming majority of accidents that happen here in the Sarasota area are related to nothing more than people drinking. Meet an 83-year-old homeless man who was arrested for trespassing. Now, I met this individual right before he was arrested. I just pulled his body cam footage. The Sarasota Police Department is very prompt. I think in 2 weeks we'll be watching this video. Now, he claims to be a U.S. citizen, but the Sarasota Police Department website doesn't lie. It lists him as a national of Cuba. Now, when I met this individual, he swore to me that he was a U.S. citizen born in the islands of the Pacific, brought to Cuba as a baby, came to the United States as a baby thinking he was born in Cuba, but it turns out that one time he got arrested and they discovered he was born in the United States. But that's not what the paperwork says. That's a story that he told me. Now, I do suspect that the reason he told me that story is because he is homeless and likely not a U.S. citizen, and he felt that I could have been ICE or immigration. Not sure why he came to that conclusion, but it didn't take long for his story that he told me to unravel. And according to the Sarasota Police Department, he is a citizen of Cuba, which means that his whole story about being a U.S. citizen born in the Pacific Islands and taken to Cuba as a baby didn't check out. Now, he's 83 years old and claims that he's lived his entire life in the United States, but he speaks practically no English. And we'll see during his arrest report if he actually does speak English or if in the body cam footage we discovered that he doesn't know English. But regardless, he is a Cuban. A lot of times Cubans cannot be deported. So even if he isn't a U.S. citizen, which according to the Sarasota Police Department he isn't, we'll find that all out when we get the body cam footage, hopefully. But the fact that he's in his 80s and claims that he's lived in the United States most of his life will be a very difficult thing to prove because he doesn't speak English. How do you live in the United States your entire life and not learn English? It's definitely possible, but it would be hard to prove. And what do you do with somebody who's 83 years old? Let's assume he did come to the United States at a very young age, something like a year or two old, right? He's been in the United States for over 80 years. He doesn't speak English, but he's been here for 80 years, and he was brought here as a child. Deporting him back to Cuba would be an interesting notion because he even predates the existing regime of Cuba. He was in the United States before Castro's. In fact, he would have been in the United States before Castro's two previous predecessors, which were legitimately democratically elected presidents of Cuba. So this is kind of an interesting situation if there's any truth behind it. So the notion of just deporting every single person who's not a U.S. citizen that gets arrested, it gets a little bit more complicated than that. I mean, at 83 years old, he could have been illegally living in the United States before the Act of 1966 that allows Cubans to come to the United States. So he's been in the United States before the Cuban Adjustment Act, regardless if his story checks out to some degree. This is a very complicated legal situation. Meet Mr. Juarez. He is a Mexican national that lives in Plant City, Florida, in Polk County. Now, he found himself driving in Sarasota with no valid driver's license, which is a crime, and he now has an immigration hold. This individual knew he shouldn't have been driving. Now he's being deported. If he hadn't been driving, he wouldn't have got deported. He was arrested just 4 days ago. In the last week, I discovered about 4 or 5 people with immigration holds. So we're not talking an onslaught of people getting deported in Sarasota, but I did want to share with you guys the actual people who have been arrested in Sarasota and talk about the reasons why they were arrested and detained with ICE immigration holds. Note that it isn't uncommon for people to be deported once, twice, 3, and 4 times. Now, the state of Florida recently implemented new laws that if somebody reoccurs after deportation, their charges are enhanced and they will have to spend time in the state prison system. Now, with the governor's new law, any individual who breaks the first time will have a mandatory minimum of 9 months in the state of Florida. Now, I don't know if that immigration hold will see these individuals getting deported before they serve that time. But I would assume if they don't serve the time and they reoccur by entering the state illegally again, the second time will be a 2 year in the state system, which would mean that this individual would now have to, I guess, pick up the time not served before deportation. I'm not sure how that works. If anybody knows, please explain it. But the notion is that in the state of Florida, there are new laws that enhance people who are subsequent offenders. And each time, you're going to see an increase in the amount of mandatory minimum time. It's a new law that's just passed in the state of Florida. So technically, these individuals are going to get a minimum 9 months in the state of Florida. Now, anything under a year has to be served in the county jail. I'm not sure if somebody gets deported, what happens to that time that they didn't serve. But at the end of the day, the notion is this, that 9 month period would allow enough time for an immigration hold to take place. In other words, there are times when they're just not able to hold on to people long enough. They bail out and then they can't be deported. So this is just closing some loopholes perhaps. Meet Miguel from Guatemala. Now, Miguel did not have any criminal charges against him, but he was arrested for an immigration hold. Perhaps Miguel was court ordered. Maybe he was on temporary status and it expired. By the way, a lot of people are going to be seeing that situation soon. Haitians, Venezuelans, Guatemalans are soon going to see their temporary status expire. Now, Miguel is 25 years old and he lives in this neighborhood right outside of downtown Sarasota. And I don't know exactly if he did something stupid that led to him being arrested or if there's some other background details. I don't think that the Sarasota Police Department just grabbed him and arrested him for an immigration hold. It is possible, but it's one single person in a very large city. So I don't believe that this is the case. I think more realistically, he may have had some type of court-ordered issue or some other type of disturbance that led to him being detained, where it wasn't exactly criminal, but maybe he put himself in a situation. I don't know the background details. I could request the body cam footage and see exactly why he was being detained with an ICE hold with no real criminal reason. I'm sure if it's court-ordered, it would be very uneventful, but it would be interesting to see exactly what led to this individual having an ICE hold placed on him with nothing else in the background showing up that's criminal. Now, you are in a situation where a non-criminal offense can lead to somebody getting an ICE deportation hold. We don't know the details, so as far as we're concerned, this individual could have tried coming to the United States legally, could have applied for the temporary visa, and that fell through after a court hearing, leading to him having a deportation order, and perhaps after the order for deportation, he decided not to leave and stay, and that's how they got him. Again, this is all my assumption. And for the entirety of this video, keep in mind that all the disclaimers you normally see with arrests, like presumption of innocence and personal opinion. I'm just looking at these arrest records and trying to understand exactly what happened to these individuals. Meet Hector from Venezuela. He is a server, 26 years old, and he was arrested for what we call a homeless charge, which is trespassing after warning by owner. Now, I can tell you this guy does not look homeless, and he isn't homeless. But nonetheless, he got the trespassing charge, which led to a ICE hold. Now, I don't know why he refused to leave a property after the owner told him to leave. Could have been a trespassing issue. Could have been that he got fired from a job. I would just have to assume what led to him being trespassed and him deciding that he wasn't going to leave. But whatever the case was, a trespassing charge became a ICE hold, and now he is being deported. The overwhelming majority of people who are living illegally in the United States try to keep a really low freaking profile because they know that any small thing can lead to an immigration issue. In the case of Venezuelans, they don't really seem too afraid or interested in respecting the laws. And the first wave of Venezuelans that came were very financially responsible, but the new wave that's coming now, they simply don't have very good attitudes. And it seems like sometimes, like this individual, they kind of dig themselves into a hole that they didn't need to dig themselves in. Keep in mind that if he hadn't got himself this criminal charge, perhaps he could have gone to a temporary hearing and became a U.S. resident. A lot of Venezuelans have been in that situation. So there are individuals that burn their own bridge before they even get to it. And I gotta mention, when I look at the arrests of many of these people that are arrested in Sarasota, many times they have an out of Sarasota address. So they're coming to Sarasota for work or for some other reason. They don't exactly live in Sarasota. It's people that come here from other cities and end up causing a lot of trouble here. A lot of the bad things that happen in Sarasota are not people that live in Sarasota. All right, everybody. So these are the 4 individuals who find themselves with an immigration ICE hold out of Sarasota, Florida. All these individuals entered the United States, whether legally or illegally. There's no guarantee that they broke the law when they entered, but at some point or another, they found themselves on the wrong side of the law. Perhaps they overstayed a work visa, or the court ordered them not to stay in the United States, and they refused to follow that order. 3 of them decided to break the law blatantly, and that is the reason why they're being deported. So that seems pretty straightforward. Now keep in mind that absolutely nothing prevents these people from re-entering the United States illegally if they like their time here in the United States. There are some groups like Mexicans, Dominicans, and Colombians who like the notion of just continuing to enter the United States illegally after deportations. It isn't the case for everybody. A lot of people seem to learn their lesson the first time that they're not wanted here in the United States. They return back to their families and they never think about coming back to the United States illegally. But that isn't the case for everybody. In the state of Florida, there are new state laws that are going to penalize people who subsequently return to the state after they've been deported. But that doesn't even guarantee that an individual may not want to come back and join us here in the Sarasota metropolitan area. Now, here in the Sarasota metropolitan area, we have a lot of people from Brazil who try to marry people to enter the United States illegally. We have Russians who do the same. You also have a lot of people now with student visas who are supposed to be here to study, but they're really working. There's even apprenticeship visas for people who come to do stuff in the United States that they could have easily and more affordably done back in their home countries. These are individuals who are supposed to be here learning a trade, but in reality are actually just working illegally in the United States without a work permit. Many times people with temporary statuses will get the work permit, but people with student visas will not get the work permit. So you have another category of illegality, but this category isn't that obvious. A lot of times people think that Venezuelans, Hondurans, Haitians, Mexicans, these are the groups of people that people expect to see being arrested for immigration issues and ICE deportations. However, let's not forget that there are many ways to enter the United States, and that while many people are focused solely on Latin Americans that are coming here to work, you have to keep in mind that student visa exploitation, as well as individuals who marry without really having that intention, is bringing a lot of people to the United States through quote-unquote legal methods, but their intentions are very deceitful. However, very little law enforcement presence targets individuals who are here on a student visa and are not supposed to be working. As somebody who lives in this metropolitan area, I can't begin to tell you how many Russians, Brazilians, Ukrainians are currently living in one of these situations where they're supposed to be here for one reason, but they're doing something completely different. Yet despite the fact that many people are finding new, clever, and more sophisticated ways to enter the United States from way farther away in other countries, some of these countries like Russians or even security threat groups to the United States, it doesn't seem like there's much being done about that. Yet people just want to see law enforcement and ICE go after Latin American immigrants, when in reality, the entire world is finding creative ways to enter the United States. The vast majority of people who come to the United States have very good intentions, but when you find yourself breaking the law, you can expect to be deported.